Hey ladies and gentlemen, good morning. They told you to rest. So you did. You slept, you scrolled, you took the weekend off. But the exhaustion didn't leave, it just changed shape. Because burnout isn't just physically, it's spiritual. It's what happens when your life is filled with tasks, but empty of meaning. When you're doing everything right, yet nothing feels alive. And here's the truth they don't tell you. Sometimes the cure isn't more sleep. Sometimes the cure is to create. Because what your soul is craving isn't stillness, expression. They told you to rest, so you did. You slept, you scrolled, you took the weekend off. But the exhaustion didn't leave, it just changed shape. Because burnout isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's what happens when your life is filled with tasks, but empty of meaning. When you're doing everything right, yet nothing feels alive. And here's the truth they don't tell you. Sometimes the cure isn't more sleep. Sometimes the cure is to create. Because what your soul is craving isn't stillness, it's expression. You see, burnout is deceptive. It doesn't always show up with drama. It can sneak in quietly. One day you notice that things don't excite you anymore. That music doesn't hit the same. That laughter feels distant. That even your wins seem hollow. You go through the motions, up, perform, deliver, repeat. But something inside you has gone quiet. Like a room where the light used to shine, but now just flickers. And no matter how many hours you rest, you wake up tired. Not because your body didn't sleep, but because your spirit never got the chance to breathe. That's the kind of fatigue no nap can fix. It's not about rest, it's about resonance. You've been living a life that no longer reflects who you are, and your soul knows it. And this is where art begins to matter, not as decoration, not as a hobby, but as medicine. When the world becomes too loud and you lose yourself in noise and responsibility, art is the doorway back to yourself. Not because you're trying to be productive with it, not because you're trying to master anything, but because it's the one place where you don't have to be anything, you just have to feel. That might be scribbling words that don't make sense, doodling without purpose, making playlists that sound like your emotions, singing quietly in the kitchen. These are not meaningless acts. They are sacred rituals of remembering. When you're burned out, it's not because you've done too much work, it's because you've done too little of what lights you up. And art, in any form, lights the match. The world convinces us that creativity is only for the gifted or the elite. That if you can't draw something beautiful or write something profound, it's not worth doing. But that's a lie. The purpose of art isn't to impress, it's to express, to process, to reconnect. Burnout pulls you away from your humanity. It reduces you to a function, a role, a title. And the moment you stop being seen as a person, you start to feel like a machine. That's where the pain begins. But when you create even imperfectly, you shatter that illusion. You remind yourself that you are more than your to-do list. You are a creator, a translator of emotion, a mirror of wonder, and you don't need anyone's permission to reclaim that truth. Sometimes healing doesn't look like meditation or mindfulness. Sometimes it looks like painting with your fingers, or writing poetry you never show anyone, or taking photos of shadows on your wall because they feel like something familiar. Art doesn't need to be shared to be valid. It just needs to be felt. Because every time you create something honest, you restore a piece of yourself. Not the polished version, the real one. The one that remembers what it means to be here fully, without pressure, without performance, just present. And you'll notice something else, too. When you start creating not for outcomes, but for intimacy with yourself, time shifts. You stop rushing. Your nervous system softens. Your breathing slows. That's not coincidence. That's your soul exhaling. That's your mind stepping out of survival mode. Burnout traps you in linear time deadlines, calendars, minutes ticking away, but art lives in eternal time. It's timeless, formless, infinite. It pulls you out of the grind and into grace. And in that grace you begin to feel again. That's what you've been missing. Not productivity, not praise, but feeling. And no, it won't change your job overnight. It won't solve all your stress, but it will shift your relationship with yourself. You'll start seeing color where you once saw gray. You'll find beauty in places you overlooked. You'll feel your heartbeat sink to something deeper than stress, something sacred. That's what creation does. It doesn't just decorate your life, it revives it. It reminds you that you're not here to be efficient. You're here to be awake, to experience life, not just execute it. So if you're tired, if your soul feels heavy, if you can't remember the last time you felt inspired, don't just take a break. Take a brush, a pen, a melody, a lens. Give yourself permission to make something. Not because it's perfect, not because it matters to anyone else, but because it matters to you. Because when you create, you're not just making art, you're making space. Space for your truth, space for your healing, space for yourself to come back home. That is the quiet revolution. That is the cure to burnout. Not escape, not silence, but expression. You don't need to disappear to find yourself. You just need to create your way back. You weren't born just to function. You were born to feel, to wonder, to build, destroy, and rebuild something beautiful with your hands, your heart, your voice. But somewhere along the way, they told you that the only things that matter are the things that can be measured. Productivity became the god. Metrics became your worth. And little by little, you began to sacrifice your color for their structure. Your dreams became duties. Your curiosity became efficiency. And without even realizing it, you traded your aliveness for approval. This is the silent engine of burnout. It's not just doing too much, it's abandoning the pieces of yourself that once made life feel like yours. And yet, somewhere inside you, that original self still whispers. It speaks in quiet moments, in daydreams, in old songs, in childhood, memories that rise up like waves when you're least expecting them. It's the version of you who still wants to write messy stories, who still wants to dance badly in the kitchen, who still wants to take long walks without checking the time. That version of you isn't gone. It's just buried under years of performance. And the bridge back to it isn't built with hustle. It's built with art. Art is what gives your soul a voice when the world only wants results. It's not about talent, it's about truth. Your truth, unfiltered, unoptimized, untouched by strategy. It's the raw, imperfect, sacred expression of what it means to be alive right now. It's the tears you paint with, the rage you write with, the longing you dance with. You don't have to explain it, you just have to allow it. Because art doesn't require you to be fixed, it only asks you to be honest. And in that honesty, something begins to shift. The ache doesn't disappear, but it transforms. It starts to carry light, shape, meaning. You'll know you're returning to yourself when you stop needing everything to make sense, when you start creating without needing permission, when you pick up a pencil or a brush or a keyboard, not because you have something profound to say, but because you have something real to release. That release is everything. It's the pressure valve that burnout tries so hard to close. Because when you're burned out, you're holding too much expectation, too much silence, too much pretending. Art gives all of that a place to land, a place to rest, a place to transform. You don't even need hours. Sometimes, 5 minutes of free writing or 10 minutes of sketching can loosen the knots inside you. It's not about producing a masterpiece, it's about reconnecting with your inner rhythm, the one you had before life demanded you always move faster, do better, achieve more. That rhythm is ancient, it's personal, and it's always available to you if you're willing to slow down enough to hear it. The truth is, healing is rarely tidy, but creativity lets you make peace with the mess. It teaches you to hold paradox, to feel joy and grief in the same breath, to let your wounds become your ink and your longing become your canvas. You don't have to be emotionally stable to create, you just have to show up, in whatever state you're in. Angry, confused, tired, numb. That's the beauty of it. Art doesn't care how you feel, it just invites you to feel something. That invitation is sacred, especially in a world that trains us to suppress, to edit, to filter. Art doesn't ask you to clean up your emotions before you speak them. It says, come as you are. Bring the rage, bring the confusion, bring the numbness even. Bring the silence, if that's all you have. Because even silence has a sound when you put it on paper. Even numbness can be molded into color. Creation isn't about being in the right mood, it's about making space for whatever mood you're in. And slowly, gently, you'll notice you're no longer drowning in exhaustion. You're moving with it, dancing with it, painting it into shapes, singing it into softness. That's how burnout begins to loosen its grip. Not all at once, but breath by breath, brushstroke by brushstroke. You don't have to fix everything in your life to feel alive again. You just have to start telling the truth through whatever medium your soul reaches for. This is the kind of healing no productivity hack can offer, because this is remembered healing, ancient, human, deeply personal. It's not a reset button, it's a return back to your hands, back to your imagination, back to your heart. You start to see your own life as something you're not just enduring, but shaping. It becomes a creation in itself, not perfect, not planned, but yours. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, that's enough. Burnout has a way of stealing color from your life slowly, without announcement. One day you wake up and everything feels beige, routine, predictable. You eat the same meals, walk the same paths, speak the same words, and wonder why the days blur together like static. You're functioning, yes, you're showing up, you're getting things done, but inside you feel hollow, like you're participating in a life that no longer belongs to you. And here's the quiet truth most people never say aloud. Burnout isn't always about being overwhelmed by too many things. Sometimes, it's the ache of being underwhelmed by your own existence. That's why art matters. Not because it solves everything, but because it interrupts that numbness. It stirs something awake. We live in a time that celebrates convenience, efficiency, automation. Everything is optimized for speed. Faster food, quicker answers, instant feedback. But creativity refuses to be rushed. Art demands your presence. It doesn't exist on autopilot. You can't multitask your way through poetry. You can't fast forward through painting. You have to be here, fully, with your senses, your breath, your curiosity. And in that slowing down, something powerful happens. You begin to notice again the curve of a shadow on your wall, the way your fingertips smudge graphite on paper, the sound of your own thoughts before the world gets too loud. You become a witness to your own life. And in that awareness, you start to reclaim it. It's easy to think art is a luxury, something reserved for the weekends or for creative types. But that mindset is part of the problem, because when we treat art as optional, we deny ourselves one of the most natural tools of emotional survival. We forget that long before humans had jobs or cities or even language, we painted on cave walls, we sang, we danced around fire. Not for approval, not for profit, but because it helped us feel. Art has always been the medicine of the soul, the universal language of the human condition. We created not because we were artists but because we were alive. That instinct is still inside you, but in the grind of modern life it's been muted. You've been taught to ignore it, to keep your head down, to focus on what's practical. And so you stopped writing poetry, you stopped sketching, you stopped singing when no one was around. You convinced yourself it didn't matter, that it was childish, that you'd outgrown it. But you never outgrew it. You just buried it beneath stress, shame, and survival. And now that burnout has crept in, your soul is trying to reach for what it remembers, for play, for wonder, for a way to reconnect with a part of you that doesn't just exist, but feels deeply. And that reconnection doesn't require perfection. It doesn't even require a plan. You don't need to start a gallery or publish a book. You just need to follow the thread, the tiny whisper that says, what if I try this? That might mean coloring with no intention, taking blurry photos of streetlights, writing one sentence in a notebook before bed. The point isn't to create something good. The point is to create something true, because the act of creating invites a question that burnout tries to silence. What if there's more to me than this? That question is sacred. It's what keeps you from going numb. It's what lifts your eyes when they've been trained to stare only at screens. It's what cracks open the gray and lets a little color bleed through. Burnout shrinks your world. Art expands it again. And in that expansion you start to feel possibility return. Not in grand, sweeping waves, but in quiet sparks. A smile you didn't force, a tear that finally moves, a moment of joy you didn't expect. Those moments matter. They are the antidote to the dull ache of constant output. And the more you lean into them, the more you begin to trust yourself again. You remember that you are more than what you do. You are how you notice, how you feel, how you translate the chaos into something you can carry. Creativity doesn't erase your problems, but it gives you language for them. It turns weight into texture. It turns pressure into poetry. It gives you a way to say, this is hard, but I'm still here. That act alone, of naming your experience, of honoring it without rushing to fix it, is revolutionary in a world that wants you to always be okay. So let yourself be not okay. Let yourself turn that ache into movement, into shape, into sound. Let yourself make something useless and beautiful, something fragile and real, not because it's marketable, not because it will go viral, but because it reminds you that you're still you. That deep inside the tired body, behind the forced smile, beneath the spreadsheets and messages and meetings, there is still someone who dreams, someone who aches, someone who creates, and that someone is worthy of space, of breath, of time. Not just when everything is done, but now, in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of the fatigue, right here, in the middle of your very human, very sacred becoming. There's a quiet kind of exhaustion that sleep can't touch, the kind that seeps into your thoughts, your voice, your joy. You go through the motions, answering messages, keeping appointments, smiling when required, but something underneath is fraying. Not dramatically, not all at once, just slowly unraveling in places no one can see. That's the kind of burnout most people carry. The silent kind, the functional kind, the kind that makes you wonder if this is all life is supposed to be, doing everything right, yet feeling everything wrong. And when the world tells you to push through it, to be grateful, to keep going, the weight only gets heavier. Because burnout isn't just about being tired, it's about being disconnected from your sense of self, from your soul, from beauty, softness, and meaning. And that's why the answer can't always be found in rest. Sometimes the answer is found in art, because art reconnects you to the parts of you you didn't know were starving, to the feelings you've numbed for the sake of survival. It isn't just something you look at, it's something you enter, something you feel with your whole being. And you don't need to understand it for it to do its work. You just have to participate. That's where the healing lives. Not in mastering it, but in surrendering to it. Letting the brush guide your hand even if the colors clash. Letting your voice tremble through the first few lines of a song. Letting your pen say what your mouth has been holding back. You don't need to create something perfect, you just need to create something true. Something that breathes. Because art is what brings breath back into places that have gone quiet. And in doing so, it offers something burnout can never take: presence. When you create, you return to the moment. You stop reliving yesterday and stop bracing for tomorrow. You find yourself here, noticing textures, tones, the sound of your own breath. That presence isn't a luxury, it's a lifeline, because burnout thrives in the mind. It loops you in thoughts of what's next, what's missing, what's broken. But art pulls you into the body, into sensation, into expression, into the now. And for those few minutes or hours, you're not a worker, a role, a checklist. You're just a human being, meeting yourself without judgment. The more you create, the more you'll begin to notice a subtle shift. You'll start feeling again, not just thinking. You'll begin to trust that there's more to you than output, that you're allowed to feel lost, to grieve what's been sacrificed, to crave softness in a world of steel. And in that space, creation becomes a kind of reclamation. You start reclaiming your own emotional landscape. You start realizing you don't need to wait until life gets quieter to make room for your soul. You can do it now, in small, sacred ways, through color, through movement, through voice. This isn't about escaping reality, it's about grounding deeper into it. About meeting your weariness with curiosity instead of criticism. About asking yourself what wants to be expressed today. That question is powerful. It gives your soul a seat at the table. And what comes through might surprise you. Maybe it's grief that's been waiting. Maybe it's joy you forgot how to access. Maybe it's confusion, or memory, or pure wonder. Whatever it is, art gives it a safe place to land. You don't have to make sense of it. You just have to honor it. And when you do, something beautiful happens. You begin to recognize your own inner landscape again. The part of you that isn't exhausted by metrics or confined to calendars. The part of you that doesn't need to justify its existence. That inner self is still alive, still vibrant, still sacred. And the more you let it speak through painting, writing, music, design, movement, the more resilient you become. Not because burnout disappears, but because you're no longer carrying it alone. You've given it form, you've let it breathe. And in doing so, you've made space for something new to take root. This is why art isn't optional in a life that wants to be whole. It's essential. Because in a world that constantly demands, consumes, and depletes, you need something that restores. You need something that is yours. Something that no one can monetize, rate, or manage. You need a private world. A sanctuary. A space where your soul gets to exhale without asking for permission. And that space, that's what art gives you. Even if it's a corner of your room. A journal only you read. A voice note of your own poetry saved in your phone. That space can change everything. Because when you have a space to feel, you begin to heal. Slowly, gently, creatively. You remember what you're made of, not just bone and breath, but wonder, stillness, expression. You stop racing toward an end, and you start dancing with the process. And in that dance, life begins to feel less like a burden and more like a rhythm again. Less like something you survive, and more like something you shaped. So if your body is tired, rest. But if your soul is tired, create. Let yourself feel messy and magnificent. Let yourself remember what it feels like to be here, really here, without performance. That reconnection doesn't happen all at once, but piece by piece, moment by moment, it builds, until one day, you realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're living again. If you're tired of going through the motions, if your soul feels dimmed and your days feel gray, don't just wait for rest to save you. Pick up the brush, grab the pen, sing the note, take the photo, make something even if it's messy, even if it's small, because your healing won't come from doing less. It will come from feeling more. Create not to impress but to reconnect. Because the cure to burnout isn't escape, it's an expression. And art is how your soul finds its way home.